Well, good evening. My name's Bruce Wade, and this is my keynote titled The 7 Laws of the Bat Cave. So I want to start off with a quote, and the quote goes like this: "It is not the most intellectual of species that survives. It is not the strongest that survives. But the species that survives is the one that is able to adapt and adjust best to the changing environment in which it finds itself." So this is a quote that I found a while ago, and it really speaks to me because it brings up these two words, adapt and adjust, two words that we have built a business on and a business around. So we've taken those two, adaptation and adjustment, and we've added 4 other key elements to build a sustainable organization or team or person. And of course, each one of those areas cannot stand alone, so we've given each one a law to govern it, to oversee it, to make sure that it's implemented correctly, and just to keep it on the straight and narrow. And of course, all laws need laws, so we've put in a law in the middle, one law in the middle to rule all other laws. Playing around with this, well, we call this the 7 laws of the Bat Cave. But before we get into that, a little bit about me. When I was young and ignorant and had the world at my feet, when imagination was at my beck and call, this was me, running around the garden in vivid color, commanding armies, riding on my horse, slaying the enemy with a single push of the arm. Anything was possible for me. But in reality, that is what I looked like. My mother had bought me a cowboy set from the local supermarket in Zambia, and I was running around, and I could actually be anything that I wanted to be. It wasn't long before I got the Batman name. People picked up on the name. We were living in Zambia, and Batman was on TV every afternoon at 3:30. And we used to gather around the screen and watch Batman in black and white. And people soon realized that I was indeed Batman. And the Afrikaans friends of mine used to call me Vleermuis, and I really didn't understand what that meant until much later. But looking at that, that was me. But now that I'm all grown up, things are different. Things are different. This is what I am. I wake up every morning and I am Batman. I am the person who controls the universe. I have commands at my beck and call. Now, not because I have superpowers, and Batman is somebody who doesn't command the universe through superpowers injected by some spider or glow-in-the-dark stone or some magical powers. Batman is a superhero because he's innovative. He can gather the forces, he can use his intellect, and he builds machines, mechanics, processes to enable him to slay the enemy and overcome evil, and thus be a superhero. That is me. But unfortunately, in reality, this is often the person that I look like, running around with my underpants on the outside of my tights, looking like a complete fool. But that's part of life. It's who we are. So I have a little ritual in the morning that I do. So every morning I do 2 things. I put on 2 rings on my hands. The first one goes on my left hand. When I put that on, I say to myself, I am happily married and I am loved. It gives me meaning. It gives me purpose to go to work. The second ring I put on my right hand, and I put it on and I say, I am Batman. And it gives me a sense of identity and a sense of purpose and a sense of reason to go to work. So let's get back to the 7 laws of the Batcave. I'm going to take you through a journey through these, and we can deep dive into 1 or 2 of them. But I've got a couple of stories to tell you that go with some of these. So let's play around a little bit. Law number 1, the one law to rule them all. What is this law? Very simply, always do the right things right, with the right people, at the right place, at the right time. Nothing profound except for a couple of words there. The word always, not sometimes, not only when it suits you, not only when no one's looking and stuff. It's always, always do the right things right. And that's the other key word, right. We have a simple philosophy at work. As soon as we violate always or the word right, we cease. We stop, we press pause, and we reevaluate. If we find out that we're doing the wrong things, or maybe doing the right things, but in a wrong way, or with the wrong people, or at the wrong place and the wrong time, big fault of mine, often too far ahead of the time. We cease, we pause, we evaluate, and we refocus, and we're able to get that going once again. So that is the one law that rules them all. We see this law as pretty much one of our compasses, one of the things that we will do, our true north, almost like a plumb line that hangs down. The interesting thing about a plumb line, you can't get it to hang crooked. Whenever you hang it, it hangs straight, no matter how much you wiggle it. It's always true and plumb. It's a plumb line. And once we've set that, you cannot deviate from that. That is what the first law is about. We kind of summarize it down to this. Well, always keep the main thing the main thing. But do you know what your main thing is? What is your why? What is your purpose? What is your main thing? Knowing your main thing allows you to adapt and adjust to keep in the sustainable world and keep on keeping on. So always keep the main thing, keep focusing. Let's get back to some of the other laws. Law number 2 governs business models. Well, business models are an interesting thing. It's part of what we do with a lot of our clients, understanding what your business model is. And of course, it has a law that sits right there. And the law says simply, build a sustainable, effective, and functional business model. 3 words, 3 very profound cornerstones for any business model. Firstly, it needs to be sustainable. It needs to be effective, and it needs to be functional. Very hard to get all 3 of those in sync. Well, we have a little secret, and we play around with that. This is a similar example. We look at any business model with 3 different lenses. We look at the supply chain, where's the stock going, the products, how that's going to go through. We definitely look at customer care, customer relationships, how to build that trust relationship with people. And of course, it's the all-important financial model. Does it make money? Where are we going to find that money? Where's it going to end up? And are you bringing in more money than you're pushing out? 3 different business models. But you might be saying, well, I'm not a business, I'm just a people. Well, we've got a business model for the people as well. But here's an interesting quote. It says, your relevance in life is only 50% your problem. I love this quote because somewhere along the line, it's a little profound, and you read it and go like, there are 2 thoughts that go through my head. Well, where's the other 50%? And what am I actually responsible for? Well, we've broken it down, and there's some nice little areas there to deep dive on. Is education, self-esteem, networks. We're going to get back to networks momentarily. Access to opportunity. We got something on that as well. Web cred, and this thing called specialist versus generalist. Now, survey is interesting. Ask yourself a question. Is it better to become a specialist or a generalist in today's world? Well, a lot of people will say generalists went out of business, and you would be right. But specialists, unfortunately, are going the same way. So what is the answer? Well, it's simple. We need to learn how to become general specialists or specialize in general areas. And it's a different tool. It's a different mindset for a sustainable model going forward. So there's some fun stuff there to unpack and play with. Let's get back to the laws. Law number 3, adaptation. Well, here's a lovely law to unpack. Learn to adapt to the changing world, to the new rules that govern cooperative success. Yeah, cooperative success. Well, when I was drawing this out, I was thinking back, and it was interesting because the other day I was watching a James Bond movie. No, not one of the recent ones, the ones that have been messed up by the franchise rules. Remember some of these, going back to, well, when Ian and myself were young and the others weren't born yet, and playing around with that. Well, Dr. No, that's going back to literally the early 70s, maybe even late 60s. But it was interesting. The old James Bonds did something profound, this cooperative success. It didn't really exist because every James Bond movie did something profound. They had a Bond girl. Now, you can see these movie posters are a little, maybe shocking, but let's look at some of the Bond girls that they had in the earlier movies. Well, I don't think we could get by with some of those names nowadays, could we? And it's interesting there, each one of those girls, there's always a scene in the James Bond movie where James comes and sees the girl and the girl's not interested. You go like, you know, who you know, Bond, James Bond, you know, and he has a cocktail and James is kind of making moves and she go like, nah, not interested. And he goes, oh, come here, my love. And you go, no, not interested. Oh, come, give me a kiss. And you go like, no, don't kiss me. And she's pushing him away. And he says, oh, I'm going to kiss you harder. And he kisses her and she's pushing away and like, no, 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 no. And he says, come here. And he wraps his arms around and he kisses her harder, pushes her down on the sofa. And she's fighting him off. And after the third kiss, she gives way and goes, oh, James, James. And then they go off and have sex. And it's an interesting model over all the different James Bond's movie. It's the same thing. This is not cooperative success. If we had to put this in a movie now, or if we were to try this in real life now, we would surely end up in some court case or behind bars, and rightly so. Cooperative success is all about win-win or no deal. And I think that is the aspect that we've got to focus on, and we've got to learn to build this into our lifestyle. It's win-win or no deal at all. It's been one of our themes that we've adopted in our company for many, many years. And I've walked away from many a deal, many a discussion, because we've seen that it's not going to benefit both parties. And I truly believe that when I want to sleep at night, I want to sleep at night, and I don't want to have to worry about, are they going to get me? Will they find out? Will they see through the mask that I've put out there? Will they understand that I'm just pulling the wool over their eyes? So it's a very, very interesting aspect to look at. Win-win or no deal. Law number 4 is all about team. This is one of my favorite ones. I really enjoy this one. It's build around yourself the best team possible using the best people you can find. Now, I've got a little interesting story here, is that some of you might remember being at preschool or having kids at preschool. There's this thing that happens around May. It's called Father's Day Saturday. and all the kids have to take their fathers through to preschool, and you go sit on one of those impossible little plastic chairs where your knees are around your ears, and you get to see your kids standing on the stage waving frantically, hello daddy, and they sing songs about how much they love their dads, and then you go outside and you eat cake and juice out of those plastic cups with all the rough edges that mess up your lips, and you have a good time, and you go home and you kind of tick that box of I've been there through Father's Day. Well, a number of years ago with Chloe, my daughter, who's now going to high school next year, it was Father's Day grade R, and I remember the day very, very clearly because it's a defining moment in my life. I was working for myself, and it was a Saturday. We got in the car and we drove off to the preschool, me and Chloe. We parked in the right place. We got out, walked across the road, and just as I was approaching the gate to the preschool, my phone rang. I answered it, and it was an important client. It was a client that was more important than anything else at that moment. And I took the call, and I kind of opened the gate with one hand, and I ushered Chloe in, and I said, you go off and play. Let me just take this call. It's important. Now, I cannot tell you what client it was. I cannot tell you what we spoke about. But at that time in my life, it was important. It was more important than the relationship with my daughter or this Father's Day. So I snuck around the back of a tree next to the gate in a quieter place because chaos was ensuing across in the sandpit with popcorn and lots of toys being thrown around. And I hid behind the tree, and I was talking to my client, solving this dilemma that they had. And I was chatting, and it wasn't too soon until I felt a little tug at the bottom of my shirt. And I looked down, and there was Chloe looking up at me. And she said, Daddy, you won't get any friends if you hide behind the tree. You have to come and speak to the other daddies over here. And my heart stopped. I hung up the phone, and it changed the way I saw life and relationships. It was a moment that had defined the way I would interact with others, because here's a truth that was taught to me by a 4 or 5-year-old, telling me that to get friends, you need to be a friend, a truth that she had learned in the sandbox at grade R, and I had forgotten. And it was so much more important to speak to clients on the phone that actually build true relationships. So out of that, we now call them strategic networks. Strategic networks made up of 3 different things. We have support networks, people who are there to support you, people with big shoulders, people there that you can phone at 3 o'clock in the morning to say, hey, I'm having a rough day. People that will give you a hug with no expectation to fix you other than hug you tight enough until all the loose pieces kind of fit back together. Those are your support networks. Then we have our foundation strategic networks. These are the guys we often have to pay for, the guys that we build our businesses, our careers, our lives on, not because we want to be on top of them and overshadow them, but because the bigger your life, the bigger the building, the bigger the foundation has to be. People like coaches, bankers, lawyers, advisors. These are our foundation network. Very important to have, because building a career without a foundation is going to end up like a building on the soft sand. It's just going to collapse. And then we have our expansion network. Well, strategic networks wouldn't be complete without an expansion network. We call them brand champions, people who have got access to places that you cannot get alone. All important strategic networks in our life. And we move on. Law number 5. Well, this is the mitigation one. I just love that word because it rolls off your tongue so nice. And people often have to run away and go look the word up. But it's mitigation. Let's look at what that says. Well, we say identify all known risks and opportunities. We group them into a same category. And then measure and manage them by taking proactive action steps. We have a lovely tool that we do. We call it our 3D risk opportunity register. It's a lovely mathematical tool that measures the height of the risk or the scope of the opportunity versus the likeliness of it happening, and then puts it together in a mathematical graph, and then you can measure and manage it accordingly. It's a wonderful way to see opportunities in a graphic representation. It's also a wonderful way to look at your risks and see where you need to do damage control or where you need to do mitigation in your business or your life. We've even done some with some relationships. A wonderful tool to play with and unpack. Well, let's look at adjustment. Law number 6. We have to learn how to adjust, but adjusting is not something we do like an oil tanker, which takes 300 meters to change 2 degrees. We need to adjust like a ping pong ball in the southeaster. We need to learn how to become agile in our approach to circumstances and act with innovational intent. And I love that. I made that word up because we're full of innovation. So innovational intent is all about becoming innovational. So my son, that's a picture of him a number of years ago. Well, that's Michael. And he's always been a bit of an inventor. He's always been a bit of a thinker. He's in matric now, and we're finding a place for him next year. And he's a quiet, reserved type of guy, a guy that kind of sits down and goes, I'm going to think about and ponder ideas. Here he is sipping his cream soda through a straw that you can see what you're drinking before you taste it. I don't know. But a while ago, he gave me a birthday present. It was last year, and he came to me and said, well, I've got a birthday present for you, but it's intangible. Now, I had to go look that word up because I wasn't quite sure what he was going to give me. And I said, okay, so what have you got for me? And he went back to the room and came back with an envelope. And I opened the envelope, and inside was that. Well, if that's the definition of intangible, then let it be so, because that, to me, didn't make sense at all. And he was going like, Dad, can't you see? And I'm going, no, we didn't do that at school. And I was at school, a while ago. And he says, well, it's a really interesting set of mathematical procedures that if you graph them, and you plot them out and you solve for X on the graph, you get that. And that to me was absolutely profound. He had defined my name in mathematical terms. Well, how intangible is that? So yes, my son's going to university next year to do applied maths and astrophysics, and I think that fits his bill completely. So that's innovational intent. It's thinking way outside the box. Whoever crafts their father's name using mathematical algorithms for a birthday present, definitely a unique character, and we look forward to seeing where he's going to go in the future and see what's going to unpack in his life. So we have a innovational model that we play with, and it's a nice little rhyme. It's what is, what wow, what if, what now, why no, why yes, how now. It's design thinking wrapped up into a simple step-by-step formula. 6 different phases of thinking takes you from an initial idea right through. We teach this to individuals, we teach this to teams, we teach it to corporates, and it spells innovational thinking. Simple logic, simple model to get you from here to where you need to be in as short a time as possible with a good, solid, backed up mathematical model behind it. So that is innovational thinking. Our last law, law number 7, the narrative. Well, here's a really interesting law, because one of my favorite things to do is to tell stories, in case you haven't noticed. So law number 7 states simply, learn to always, there's that word always, to always tell and live your story. It's your story with life. It's your story for who you are. We have a wonderful way to tell stories that we've learned over the years, and they always start with, well, once upon a time. Now, the nice thing about that phrase is whatever you say after that is always believable. Whatever you say after once upon a time, no one can ever tell you that you're telling a mistruth or a lie or a fib or, oh, that's not possible, because if you start with once upon a time, green dragons can levitate across a yellow river and apples can turn into fairies, and it doesn't matter because the world of imagination can be bridged by that. It's really simple and really easy. Now, stories that we tell, we have 3 stories in our lives, and they go once upon a past. This is your story of your life behind you. Where you are today is based on the story that you've lived from the time you were born to right now. And unpacking that story, understanding who you are, understanding why we are, and understanding why we are where we are today is all unpacked in the once upon a past. But we have another story called Once Upon a Now. And the once upon a now is all about, well, where are you now? What are you actively involved in today? With purpose, with a sense of focus, with a sense of understanding, and unpacking the third story, which is once upon a future, a story that tells of where you will be, where you hope to be, and where you are planning to be in your story once upon a future. We use a whole bunch of story mechanisms. We base our story on the formula that they write Hollywood movies on. We use all the different characters. We use story cards and character cards, and we unpack stories of not only your life, but your business. We bring them all together and we bridge across the 7 laws of the Bat Cave for one purpose: to learn to survive, to adapt and adjust to the changing environment in which you find yourself. We call those the 7 laws of the Bat Cave. And it'll be my privilege, my honor, to work with you unpacking any one of these or 7 in your life, in your business, in your team, in your company with you. Thank you very much.